On today's Church TechCast Q&A, HDMI, a video system, and ProPresenter. Hello everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Church TechCast Q&A show. My name is Paul Allen Clifford, and I will be your host today. And I would just love for you to join the conversation. So head on over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact, and that's a place for you to ask your questions, leave comments, say I love the show, say Paul, I would love the show if you would change this thing. Anything like that. Leave your questions. Just interact with me at that on that page, or you can even send me a message on Twitter. Head over to twitter.com/@PaulAllenCliff, PaulAllenclif, and I'll talk to you there. So let's first off, before we get going too deep, let's start by talking about my pastor's book. What life are you waiting for? That's not a question, that's more rhetorical, but it's the title of my pastor's book because he wants to know, why in the world are you not pursuing your dreams? Why aren't you doing the thing that God has called you to do? You have one and only one life. What's stopping you? Is it insecurity? Is it the fear of failure? What is it? And let's talk about it, and let's try and get past it. So that book is on sale for pre-order right now on Amazon.com, and that's what the link is for. trinitydigitalmedia.com/whatlifebook will take you directly there, and that's my affiliate code. So I will get a little something if you do buy it there. But I think that you're going to hear all kinds of stuff about this book coming up in the next few months. So why not go ahead and pre-order it now and know that you've got your copy when Tyndale releases it. Also, Creating Church, my new course for teaching churches how to be creative and how to just get the most out of the time that they have to spread the gospel. And that's actually what it's all about. You see, I believe that the art that was created up until the Renaissance, and even a little bit after, is just the beginning of what we can do in the church. Why did we ever quit doing art? Why did we relegate art to hymns that quit being written, I don't know, about 200 years ago? Why? Well, let's talk about it. That's part of what my course Creating Church does. So visit Creating Church, that's creating.ingchurch.com for more information and to register for the course. 28 weekly lessons for less than the cost of a latte from Starbucks. Once a week you get one of these lessons, and I think it will be a huge help to you and your ministry. So head on over there and get that. Okay, so let's just dive right into the questions, shall we? So, first from from the church, from churchmedia.net, CFCRC, that's his username, says, moving away from HDMI. Good morning. I am the tech director at a medium-sized church. We run one service simultaneously in two venues. We have projection in both venues, and we capture audio and video for various media formats. We are in the process of a large-scale building project which includes tech upgrades. Good for you. Up to this point, we have relied heavily on HDMI. I would like to move away from this format. My reasons for doing this doing so include HDCP, high definition copy protection, short cable runs, and the use of DAs, connector durability, and finally general bugginess. Remember, as an aside, remember I hate HDMI, and this guy is telling you why. So just remember that when you want to put in HDMI in a projection system. Okay, back to this. Instead, I would like to move us to an SDI-based system. Much better choice. I believe it's more reliable and easier to maintain. My concern is with our projectors. They do not have an SDI input, only HDMI as well as the standard analog and digital inputs. I want to avoid HDMI to such a degree that I'm seriously considering putting in an SDI to analog video component mini converter right at the projector rather than SDI to HDMI. Then, once our budget permits, upgrading our projector to a better model with an SDI input. Are there any potentially serious issues with converting to an analog component video at the projector, or should I keep on using HDMI input on the projector? Okay, great question. Your biggest concern is the poorly named analog sunset. Analog sunset sounds like a good thing. It sounds like beautiful and multicolored, and no. Analog sunset is something that the movie industry lobbied to get through Congress that would make it illegal for any device to have greater than 480i. Maybe it was 480p, but it was low, like either enhanced definition or standard definition on component inputs. Technologically, component can handle up to 1080p, no problem. You have the cabling in a component signal to do it. So the question is, do your projectors predate that? And if they do, how high a resolution can they handle? So if right now you're getting in 1080p on your HDMI connection, it's possible that you will in fact only get 480i on the component connection. So you need to check that out. It's also possible if they predate that in fact you will get a good signal, but it'll only be up to 1080i. I know 1080 component can do 1080p, but for some reason 1080i seemed to be about the limit. Maybe that's because about the time that 1080p content started arriving, so did HDMI. So maybe that's the case. I won't ascribe evil motives to what can be explained by other circumstances, but I think that maybe that's at least something to look at. Now, you can get around this problem. Even using HDMI, instead of using HDMI, you probably have a DVI connection. And I looked it up, and I believe it's Blackmagic. If it's not Blackmagic, it's Aja. One of those two, or maybe both, make a DVI or an SDI to DVI connector kit. Now, I don't know anything about the latency of it, but I believe that all these signals are very similar to one another, and the conversion wouldn't be a big deal. So if that is in fact the case, then it should be fairly trivial for you to go from DVI to or from SDI to DVI, and then you get a great signal. So that's the two things that I would look into if I were you. Carlos Ramos on YouTube, in response to some of my ProPresenter questions, said, "Hi, I'm from Spain. Hi, Carlos from Spain. I'd have to look it up to see if you're the farthest east I've gotten from. I've had people from South Africa tune in, so I don't know from a longitude perspective, but welcome nonetheless. Okay, I want to know if it's possible to change the scale and size of backgrounds in ProPresenter. Now, what I assume that he means, and I wrote him back, so I haven't heard. I assume that he means that the background is either stretched or squished. If that's the case, there are 3 settings that you need to look in. If you right-click on the background, go to, Media Properties. There's a drop down that's like stretch to fill, scale to fill, and scale to fit. Try those 3 and see which makes it look the best. So one of them will fill up the entire screen. Stretch to fill, I believe, is the one, and it's what I typically use because I don't use photos very often. So I'll do stretch to fill, and it will, like if I've got a wider widescreen, it will stretch that just a little bit to fill the background. But if you had a portrait picture, it would stretch that, and so the person would look short and squat and just wrong. So you don't want that. Scale to fill would zoom in on the entire thing so that it fills. I believe I've got these last 2 correct. They might be reversed in my mind. And stretch to fit, that is just the default. Whichever size is longest, it fits in there. So if it's portrait, it fits portrait. If it's landscape, let's say it's widescreen, but like a wider screen than 16 by 9 or 16 by 10, whatever your projector is, then it would fit along the edges. I'm trying to do this with my hands. Okay, there we go. Sorry, it's mirrored and it's throwing me off. Okay, it would do it like this, but not top and bottom. Understand? So those are your 3 options. Probably the best way to do it is to have a background that if you're putting a still on top of, you know this background fills in ProPresenter, and I will put this background on top of it, or this picture on top of it. So it could be a series background. That's what we typically use. But I've also seen people that will take, and I've done this in the past, take the foreground image, scale it up huge, throw a Gaussian blur on it, and so that it's artistic and not clearly what's in the foreground, and use that as the background. So either way is an acceptable use. So you can do that with videos or stills. So that's what I would do in your situation, Carlos. Seems like Oh, I missed this one. Micah Horneman on the Google Plus group, Church Tech Google Plus group, said, I'm in search of a good low-cost mic option for an upright piano. We're currently using a Shure SM57 pointed at the back of the sounding board. This method works, but it isn't giving me much clarity as we'd like. Giving as much clarity as we'd like. Any tips or ideas? So the problem with his question is he's looking for a low-cost alternative that will give more clarity. So Audix, AUDIX, which is what we use at my church. One of the other guys suggested that. I'm not an audio guy. I don't play one on this podcast, but he suggested that, and that's that rung a bell that that's what we use. Unfortunately, it's a $1,500 solution. So, since it's a $1,500 solution, I would doubt that that's low cost. I suggested putting the SM57 inside, because it's an upright piano, inside the case. Someone else suggested that maybe a better solution is either putting in two, one at the top and one at the high end and one at the low end, and then you have more mixing ability. A third person said high, middle, and low. Those are all good options. As I say, Audix is probably the best way to do it. I've seen people put an SM58 or an SM57 right above where the pedals connect. That could be problematic from an impact perspective, because as the pianist lets go of the pedal, it does make some impact, so you might get some rhythm in there that you don't want. So those are the things that I would look for if I were you. Wow, I skipped 2 questions. Okay, on trinitydigitalmedia.com, Ronald J. Weidman asked, "Hi Paul, please help me set up a list of equipment to capture a podium 50 feet away from the camera, then send to a room via cable to an overflow room to project onto a screen." Okay, I sent back an answer to him. Basically it was, well, I need to know what equipment you have right now that we need to work with. Does the satellite room have a speaker system that we can tap into? Because I'm assuming that they're going to want to be able to hear this. So, if you have absolutely nothing, I would get, Canon makes the Vixia line of cameras. I would get a Canon Vixia, put that on a Manfrotto tripod with the video head, and put that where you need it to go. Also get a zoom controller if you can. That's really going to help with the zooming in and out. Then I would come out of that, if you just want the camera, come out of it HDMI, turn that into SDI, and turn SDI into either DVI, or if the projector will take SDI, plug that in. Then for audio, you can inject audio into the SDI at the initial conversion point from HDMI. You could also take audio from your soundboard and plug that into the camera and get it in there as well, and then plug that into the projector, and you'll need to strip out the audio to either amplify it, because the projector, even if it has a speaker, it's not going to be good unless it's in a little bitty boardroom, which he also didn't tell me the size of the room. So if it's, say, going to a small room, maybe a plasma screen, an LCD, an LED backlit LCD, those are all options. But if it's like, yeah, this is our video overflow in the gymnasium, then a projector is clearly your answer, but you also need audio. And you need either a self-amplified speaker or speakers, or you need amplifiers and speakers to make that happen. So I need more details to recommend for sure, but that's probably where I would go from there. Okay. Is that, yeah, VO Heart Media on churchmedia.net. Oh, Victory Outreach Heart of the Bay. Okay. Asks, projector TV screens. I pray someone can help me out here. We are using an Apple G5 running ProPresenter connected to a projector. How can we get the image from the projector onto 2 or more TV screens wirelessly? That's the trick, wirelessly, without using any cords or wires. Yeah, that would be what wirelessly means. The building that we have our services does not belong to us, and the ministry that owns it won't let us run any cords or wires to the TVs. The TVs would be about 60 feet from the media booth. Any suggestion? The TVs are newer and have HDMI and USB ports. Any help would be provided. Thank you and God bless. Okay. I'm a little surprised that ProPresenter 5 will run on an Apple G5. I've got one myself. It's down here at my feet. And it was a great computer 6 or 7 years ago. And I think that officially Renewed Vision does not support the G5, so I'm a little surprised it works at all. With that said, there are some options. If you were to upgrade your G5 to something like an iMac, an Intel-based iMac that can run OS X Mavericks, and once ProPresenter is upgraded to support Mavericks, you can use an Apple TV as an external out. Now, I don't know about latency. I don't know about dropped frames, anything like that. I don't know if it's going to look good at all. But you could do that. There are also wireless kits, and I used one 3 weeks ago, and it worked okay. If you want to do this well, it's going to cost a lot of money. I have a feeling, given what you've told me, that you don't have a lot of money. So, here's the other solution. There are wireless HDMI kits that are a couple of $100. And you could use a wireless HDMI kit to make this work. The problem is your G5 doesn't have HDMI. So you need to convert it to HDMI, get a card that will output to HDMI, but then that potentially messes up your entire system. So, I'm going back to, I think you need to upgrade your computer. I think you can do it for a couple $1,000s. If you already had a better computer, you could do it for a couple of $100. The problem is that you just don't have the flexibility that you really, really need. So that's what I'm a little concerned about. So, keep that in mind. Okay. Bill Tenney Britton asks on the Google Plus Church Tech group. My mouth almost didn't want to work there. Hey all, I've been asked by a pastor's school to make some book recommendations. The books they've selected for the communications course are, well, let's say if 1955, oh wow, first time I read that I glanced and thought it said 95. If 1955 ever comes back, they're set. What recommendations would you offer to those in a pastor's preparation course on web development, digital communications, etc.? Remember, these aren't techies, but they'll be the ones making tech recommendations in mid to small churches. Thanks for your input. And someone asked if they're, Jeremy Smith asked if they're looking for traditional printed books or not. Yes, they are. So here's what I would do. At the risk of sounding self-serving, Podcasting Church and Tweeting Church are written for beginners. That's who I tried to write them to. Anything by my mentor Jason Moore or Lynn Wilson of the Digital Storytellers Lumicon. No, they were only Lumicon very shortly. Yeah, Digital Storytellers conference. Those are great. Lynn Sweet has some stuff, but it's more conceptual. Yeah, though. Tony Morgan has some stuff that's still kind of conceptual. Yeah, that's what I'd look for. Is those. Okay. Let's see here. Seems like there were a couple more. I didn't copy them all onto my list. Yeah. And I think that that's all for today. I'd hoped that I'd find some more questions, but that's a good start. So I want you to feel free to drop me a line if you find that your question has not been answered. And Paul at trinitydigitalmedia.com, and I'm happy to talk to you about it there. And I would love to just help you and your church take the next steps in what it means to use technology, creativity, and the arts to go out and change eternity. Till next time, I'm Paul Allen Clifford with Trinity Digital Media. .com.